All-American boy. He is an Eagle Scout, having been the youngest ever to receive the award. Following graduation from high school, he went off to the University of Idaho, where he received his MBA in 1964. He received his doctorate in economics, baccalaureate in international diplomacy, and legal training from USC in 1971. Our honoree served Presidents Nixon and Ford as a détente negotiator in Moscow, as an emissary to Tehran, and as a special assistant to the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development. He has been most active in the corporate world as well, serving as the Chief Operating Officer of ReadyPack, the nation's largest salad maker, CEO of the Jockeys Guild, the national sports union. Jockeys Guild, I thought that was an underwear manufacturer. And COO of Ph.d. Nutrition, a company that markets food supplements in over 2,000 locations nationwide. He spent 5 years at the helm of each one of those above enterprises. To say that Dr. Gertmenian maintains a very busy schedule is an understatement. He co-founded the California Philharmonic Orchestra, hosted an AM radio talk show, and has served as director of SunWest Bank, Amherst Life, the Near East Foundation, and the Mediglobe Foundation. He often appears as a guest expert on economic issues on national news shows and is quoted in publications around the globe. He is the author of the Economath Primer and the nationally marketed CD, Everything is Negotiable. Who better than at negotiating than an Armenian? Dr. G, as he's known on campus, has been professor of economics at Pepperdine University since 1982, having just reached the 30-year milestone of an illustrious teaching career. His special talents have been validated by the university, which has honored him as the outstanding professor at its graduate business school. One of the more unusual aspects of Dr. Gertmenian's walk through life is that he is an honorary citizen of China. Each spring, by special invitation from the Chinese government, he shepherds his graduate students and friends through Tibet, the giant panda reserve, and many other places close to foreigners. He invites all to join him on what continues to be the world's most remarkable traveling seminar. Do they have a bus big enough for all of us? Gertmenian, take one in. One common characteristic our honorees all seem to have is an abundant amount of energy that can be channeled into multiple endeavors. Dr. G is a prime example of that versatility. Please welcome the multi-talented Dr. Levon Gertmenian.
Cindy.
Each of the recipients tonight have two things in common. One is that we all owe an enormous amount to other people that help us along the way. And I thought I would make a comment about that in my own life. In the middle of my academic career, the Burbank Foundation made me a loan of an astounding amount of money so that I could continue my education. When it came time to go to repay the loan, I went to Lisboa, Portugal, and met with the trustees for 4 hours to make my arrangement. At the end of the 4 hours, they told me that they would not accept my arrangement, but instead suggested that if I would simply agree that sometime in my life would become a teacher, they would excuse my dad. So I'm forever thankful to Banquet and his incredible efforts to help our Armenian cause. The second person that I want to thank, of course, is someone that you all know, my father. And all those years and all the money that I spent getting an education, I would from time to time, two or three times a year, go stand before him and ask for some money. He never paused. He simply wrote out the check. But if you know Seven John, you know that he never wanted me to feel like it was a gift. So he would say, you see those 2 boxes of produce down there? Well, you pick them up and you put them in your car and you make a delivery on your way back to the university. The third person, of course, is Cindy. During those 4 or 5 months before my doctoral comps in mathematics and economics, I locked myself up in a basement and never came out for all that time. And during that period, well, she would bring me meals and push them through the door at me, and I'd slam the door and go back to studying. How she put up with that, I do not know. Certainly the best sales job I ever did. The second point that I want to make tonight is that every one of those people that received the award tonight understand that the most important thing that they do is teach values. That's what makes them great teachers. And so I'm going to, with your patience, review an experience of my childhood where one of those values was taught to me by my father. Each evening, when I was a child, the family would sit around the dinner table, join in the family prayer, and then eat quietly with enthusiasm, of course, and wait for our dad to ask each of us a question. Usually it was about something we were supposed to have read, a chore we should have completed, or occasionally about the news of the day. Once when I was 10 years old, Father said, "And how was your day, Wayne?" Oh, I said, we have a new boy in our class. My dad looked up. "A new boy? What's his name?" I was in trouble. We had often been lectured about the importance of learning someone's name. I spoke quickly, using the precious time that each child was allowed to speak at dinner. "I don't know his name. He's strange and nobody talks to him. His clothes are dirty and full of holes and he smells awful. I don't think he bathes. He must be very angry about something. I think he's been beaten up. And he has small burns on his arms. He doesn't talk. He just glares off into space. He was seated in the back of the class today and he ate lunch alone. Anyway, he doesn't have any friends, and at this rate he won't have any." Sybil looked at me with the most severe, curious eyes and said, "Well, I guess you'll be having lunch with this boy tomorrow, won't you? Learn what you can about him and get his name. Have lunch with him? But he's so strange. Nobody wants to be around him. Obviously, he comes from a poor family. He doesn't belong in our school." The stern look from my father told me that this discussion was over. And I knew that the first question that would be asked at tomorrow night's dinner would be directed at me. I sat quietly, ate my meal, and contemplated the discomfort of the 24 hours that would follow. The next day, when the bell rang for lunch, the other students ran out of the room. I watched the boy very carefully. I was surprised how small he was. Frail, and a head shorter than I, and I'm shorter than average. He walked slowly, quietly, and when he got to the cafeteria, he sat alone. Nobody went near him or showed any interest in talking to him. I approached with caution and took the chair next to him. "My name is Wayne," I said. "What's yours?" He looked at me with the most soulful, untrusting eyes. Then he took a deep breath and he mumbled, "Charlie, Charlie Darnell." And then he smiled. That night at dinner, I reported that Charlie was from another state, that he didn't know where his parents were and didn't care. He was staying with a foster family and that they didn't want him, and that the burns on his arms, they were from cigarettes, and he did not explain. My father thanked me for my report and turned his attention to another child. The next day, during the recreation period, while I was playing football with the other boys, the opposing team began to cheat. I got angry and called their leader a horse's ass. The given name of the horse's ass was Michael Adams. Now, Michael was the biggest kid in school and a bully. I don't know what got into me. 10 minutes of football and I turned into the village idiot. Michael started toward me, fully intending to beat the living tar out of me. My cousins, who are usually on the playing field to protect me from my big mouth, were not at school that day. So I bravely stood there waiting for the beating that was sure to come. Then at the moment of my doom, from out of nowhere, Charlie jumped into the fast closing space between me and my attacker. Everyone froze, dazed by the speed of his fearless defender. The little boy seemed even smaller in front of Michael. In the blink of an eye, Michael was on the ground, and Charlie was smashing his face with alarming fury. And then, with remarkable calm, Charlie stood up and slowly walked away, leaving his victim in a pool of blood. We were shocked. In our sheltered lives, we had never seen such anger. Later that day, Charlie was called to the principal's office and expelled from school. And I have not seen him since. Recently, I was reading a lawyer's journal, as I do occasionally, to keep track of my friends who practice law and serve on the bench. One article listed matters before the criminal court of the Honorable Randolph Nelson, an old friend from law school. It included a report of an assault and battery case that caught my eye. The defendant's name was Darnell, Charles Darnell. The very sound of this name from my childhood was like the sweet music of a long-forgotten ballad. How many Charlie Darnells can there be? I called the attorney of record, explained who I was, and asked about the case. The lawyer verified Darnell's age and size and then reviewed the facts briefly. And Darnell was sitting in a bar when another patron, probably drunk, began pinching the cocktail waitress. The lady asked the drunk to stop, but he became even more abusive. When Darnell warned the drunk to leave the waitress alone, things got ugly. The drunk, much younger and larger, told Darnell to mind his own business. Darnell got off his bar stool and proceeded to beat the man to a pulp. When he was arrested, Darnell would only say that he was just taking care of business. He was found guilty of creating a public disturbance, assault and battery, and endangering a life. Final hearing was tomorrow, and he expected that Darnell would be sentenced to 12 months in the county jail. He gave me the Darnell phone number, and I called. A woman with a soft voice answered. I gave her my name, and I pleaded with her not to hang up. She identified herself as Mary, Charlie's wife. Then I related this anecdote from my childhood, and I asked if it were possible that it was the same Charles Darnell.
that's my Charlie, she said. He came to California from Texas when he was 10 years old, and he lived in your town for only a week. He's been in at least a dozen fights since he was expelled from your school, and always for the same reason. Charlie never makes an excuse. He never complains. He never explains. He just believes that he should protect those that are defenseless. Charlie's getting old now, but he hasn't changed a bit. I asked her not to tell Charlie about my call, and I promised to call again after he got out of jail. She understood and agreed, and we said goodbye. That night I called my old friend, Judge Randolph Nelson, and after we exchanged pleasantries, I asked about the Charles Darnell case. Oh, it's an interesting misdemeanor case, he said. The victim was the only witness. He claims that Darnell was drunk and beat him up for no reason. But the victim is the one with the history of public intoxication, and the defendant, Darnell, refuses to testify. At that point, I told him the story from my childhood and about my conversation with Mary Darnell. Randolph laughed. I knew there was something wrong with this case. I'll dismiss the charges, he said. I'll send him home in the morning. And then we set the date to play golf. A week later, I called Charlie at home. He was quite surprised. Obviously, Mary had kept her promise not to tell him about my earlier call. I asked him if he remembered me, and he assured me that he did. And then I asked him, "Why did you fight for me that day, 60 years ago?" "Because," he said quietly, "when I was a child, you were the only friend I had." Thank you so much for that.